So this one today is a little different. Now, I've made videos before on the importance of meditation and journaling. And many of you may think, where do you get these ideas from? And a lot of the streams of consciousness that I have come from when I'm journaling and when I'm reflecting on my day or reflecting on things and values that are important to me. Now, one thing that came up when I was journaling was the importance of travel, the importance of not being stagnant, even if it's within the country you live in, just traveling to a different city. So, what I'm going to do today is something slightly different, and I'm going to read the entry that I was writing in regards to travel and the importance of travel. Because I feel like when I journal, I'm able to articulate things better than when I'm just speaking like right now off the cuff. And words are so powerful because they're able to be dense. So this is not a long journal entry, but I think it just describes the point of the video that I'm going to expand and we're going to go further into. I'm going to talk about the stories and we're going to elaborate on each particular component further. But the initial thought of why traveling has such a huge purpose and why taking yourself out of your comfort zone is important can be encapsulated within this journal entry. So I'll get my phone up and let's jump into it. Don't be stagnant. Travel is growth. Even different cities shift your mindset. You can't unsee things you experience once you step outside your bubble. Immersing yourself in cultures expands your worldview and unlocks creativity. New stimulus stretches time. Days feel longer, more alive. Stay in one place too long and the days compress into one. Sharks keep swimming. You don't want to be a big fish in a small pond. Travel isn't just where you go, it's who you become when you move. It humbles you, reminds you how small you are, and that humility keeps you hungry. It also breaks default settings, showing you that there are hundreds of ways to live. And I feel like that was just important to encapsulate it because that describes everything. That essentially is the premise of the video. But we can relate it to times where I felt that, it could be even as simple as taking a day trip to a different city. And when you experience a different city, you're experiencing different people. One of the things that stuck out to me here is the idea of time almost expanding. Because you take in so much new stimulus and there's so much new information, the days feel longer. You would have felt it. Have you ever been on holiday and you're like, it almost feels like you've been there for a week already and you disassociate from your life back home because when you get into that monotonous sort of routine of the days, your mind can predict what's coming next and it compresses time and time seems to fly. The distance between Monday and Friday when you're in your routine is just a blur. But when you travel for some reason, that 7 days, that 10 days, that 2 weeks when you're away, it almost feels like a lifetime. Why is that? It's because you're constantly engaging in new things. Everything has an element of unpredictability. And really, that's your essence as a human because you're actually living. You're actually present within the moment. The only time that we lose concept of presence is when we're thinking too much about the future or too much about the past. And in these instances, when we're in that routine, because we can predict our future, time begins to compress. However, when you're away, you're almost lengthening your life. Because if one day feels like you've been somewhere for a week and 2 days feels like you've been there for 2 weeks, you're almost expanding the amount of time you get to live experiences because everything is new, it's novel, it's fresh, down to the scents, down to the things that you touch, the food that you eat, the tastes, the sounds that you hear on a daily basis. Everything is completely different. That's one thing. Then the other component is when you travel, even if it's just outside of your city, you engage in different people, which challenges your perspective. And for me, I find it greatly unlocks my creativity. So I've had it certain times where I'll take a trip to, London or Manchester, as I live outside of the major cities in the UK. And the sense of inspiration I feel, because there's almost like a collective energy. You feel charged. If you're someone that's in an environment that is not necessarily serving you, the first thing I'd recommend is to just take a trip out. It doesn't have to be a permanent move, but you need to disrupt your pattern. You need to disrupt what's familiar so that you can engage in activities that begin to stimulate your mind. Something I've realized, even in the prosperous, richer areas of where I live, a lot of it's old money. A lot of it is money that's been handed down. So it's generational wealth, meaning people there have their money tied up into assets, but it's not necessarily liquid. So what that does is quite a contradiction, and is almost like a paradox, because people on paper are seen to be millionaires because the houses in these affluent areas are worth so much. But because they don't have the means to create it, they act in scarcity, and there's a lack of abundance, and there's not a sense of liquidity and money flowing, which means that there's a lack of opportunities, which means that the frequency is actually quite low, although it's considered to be an affluent area. However, when you go to places where it's dynamic and there is liquid money and there's opportunities and there's that sense of abundance because people have created the wealth themselves and it's not just being handed to them, you can actually consume that energy without even having the money. And now, just by you positioning yourself there, if you're someone of value, you can actually get into the race. So I just find it fascinating how these little bits of positioning are not just exclusive to traveling outside of the country, is exclusive to understanding the frequencies of the areas you're in within your own city or going outside of your city. And some of you may be able to relate to this. You can go to an affluent area and it just feels like people are stringent. They're very uptight with things, and you think, why is this like this? Because I know your house is worth millions. It's because they don't have the means to create millions. So they're not acting from a position of abundance. They may have inherited X amount, but one thing you realize about money is if you don't have the means to create it, no matter how much you have, if you consistently spend it, it will amount to nothing. And these people are very aware of this, and they are privy of the fact that they've been put in a fortunate position and they want to just conserve as much as possible. But we understand that, the universe and God and the creator doesn't necessarily value things the same way we do. It doesn't value scarcity, it values abundance. And this ties into the importance of traveling and pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. Because when you go to these areas, there are frequencies that align with someone who is ambitious and who's seeking success. You just have to position yourself correctly. So I love that. I love the idea that, you can stretch time, but also the idea that where you put yourself can align you in regards to your creativity and almost the wavelength that you're on and how you feel. There are definitely grids and places on this earth where some of us are more aligned. Some of us feel more spiritually aligned. Some of us feel more inclined to make money. Some of us feel more inclined to help people. Some of us are more energized. This is very real and you'll feel it. And one of the exercises to do is to travel and experience this. Okay. Now, I wanted to use the initial sort of journal entry to preface some stories of when I've expanded my mindset and when things have completely changed for me. So, I've not spoken about this on this channel, but I went to the Dominican Republic. Now, many people ask me, why did you go there? And to you listening right now, you might say it's obvious. It's a popular tourist destination. You go to Punta Cana, you go and have a nice time in an all-inclusive hotel on the beach. Sounds about right. However, when I went to Dominican Republic, I didn't go to Punta Cana. I didn't go there. Why did I go there? To this day, I have an understanding. I would like to say I'd probably cool to go there, but I didn't know anyone there. I don't speak Spanish. I'd never been there before. No one I'd known had ever been there before. And I didn't go to a tourist destination. I went to the capital. I went to Santo Domingo. Initially, my idea was to go there for around 2 weeks. I didn't book a return flight. And when I went there, and I'd immerse myself in a culture. I didn't speak the language. I had to get a taxi from Punta Cana that drove me to Santo Domingo in the capital that took around an hour and a half from a guy that I could barely communicate with. And when I arrived at the Airbnb and approached with my luggage, no one could help me speak English. No one spoke English. No one could help me in any sort of way. For some reason I felt alive. Although it was very confusing and it was very difficult, I felt as if I was on some sense of I had a sense of a journey. I had something to conquer. I'm in a new land, and where some people see that as a challenge, I saw it as an opportunity. I can thrive here because I'm considered exotic. A lot of people that go there are from America. I'm from the UK. Now, little did I know that they wouldn't actually be able to differentiate the difference between someone that's English and from America. So that actually took away that advantage. And maybe I'll make a video about that, you know, going where's advantageous for you based on your unique traits, because I thought that it'd be an advantage being from the UK there, but it just turns out no one can really tell. If you don't speak Spanish, it's like, bro, you're American. But yeah, that challenge of not being able to even speak to the Uber driver for an hour and a half and trying to grasp at the little bit of Spanish I know, and testing my ability to build rapport with someone on the other side of the planet. That journey ended up being something that was going to be 2 weeks, to me staying there for over 3 months and having one of the craziest summers, not just because of the parties, but really immersing myself in the culture. Getting that sense of humility and taking a step back and realizing, wow, there's more to the world. There's a whole, they don't even speak English. They don't care about the affairs that are going on with the politics in the UK. That's completely outside of their realm and their scope of importance. 2 week trip, 3 months there. Operating, fortunately, as I was working remote, servicing clients in the digital marketing space. So I was able to be there for that amount of time. But the things that I was learning, the fact that there is a quality of life out there where it's not necessarily the cheapest, but the value you get for your money. You know, living in an apartment building that has a concierge security, is safe, is in an established area. I was assuming to go there and see a lot of rich Americans. I've gone there, and the Dominican locals are rich. They're rich not only in culture, but they're rich in money. There's a lot going on there. Now, of course, there is poverty, but I'm not gonna go there and put myself in poverty for an extended period of time. I'd explore it because I want to get to feel it, you know. I'd go to the barber shops that are in the hood. I'd play basketball. All of this stuff is on my Instagram and my highlights. You can see me, you know, going to the hood there, playing basketball, going to the barber shops, engaging with people, submersing myself in the culture. And what that does for your character development is unprecedented, because now you have more data sets and you have more reference points. So even if I meet someone and they've not been to the Dominican Republic, but they're of Dominican descent, there's that level of understanding. Even if I meet somebody and they haven't been to the capital, I can talk about Punta Cana because I also went there. And I think this is something important to unlock. If you're someone that wants to develop your ability to build rapport with people and connect with people on a deeper level, you need more reference points for things. They don't have to be the exact same things, but you need more reference points in general. So what that means is I can even connect with someone or have a conversation and feel a little bit more connected to someone that has Latin American descent, whether they're Cuban, Haitian, because I've been to that area of the world. It's not that I've been to their country, but there's more data points and reference points. Okay, now I understand, okay, a Toro Fuente cigars. We can have a conversation about that because I've been to the cigar lounge that is founded there. Or I can talk about baseball now because it's popular in that country. Or Presidente beers. You know, I can now begin to pick these reference points and connect with people on a deeper level just because I took myself out of my comfort zone. So something that was now initially uncomfortable allows me to actually be comfortable with a wider range of people. And it's that counterintuitive sense of life where things are not linear. It doesn't necessarily seem like it just makes sense on paper immediately, but in the bigger picture, Now I can suddenly have conversations about things that I could not have conversations about before. Connecting with people that are high up in that country, that come from wealth, talking about, going to private school in Dominican Republic, talking about how to sustain a life there. And now I'm connecting with people from America that have got businesses in New York and they've got businesses in Miami. And now it's almost like a spider web, because you're stringing together these reference points, but you're stringing together these connections of people that are from different places. And again, it comes back to you. If you're someone that's taking care of yourself and you're someone that is, you move with integrity, they're going to be able to sense that. And now you become valuable. So yeah, man, this journal entry, it made me really reflect on the importance of travel, and the times where I've kind of taken myself out of my comfort zone, and have these moments that are invaluable. Sometimes you think about the cost of something, and you think about, how much it's going to cost to get there, but you never think about how much you spent on a holiday once you're back. You only remember the experiences. You never think about the extra shifts that you may have had to put in before you got that, or how much you'd had to save, or how you had to cut back in other areas. You only remember those, how it made you, that experience, those rich moments where you're trying something new, you're trying new cuisines, you're meeting new people. And I try and implement that, because that was an extreme example. It's not to say you have to go to the Dominican Republic and extend a 2 week holiday for 3 months and be there for a quarter of the year. But it's to say, this weekend or in your day, how can you challenge yourself and step outside of your comfort zone to get that new stimulus, to spark that creativity? So yeah, I thought you guys would find this passage interesting. Also, yeah, the idea of how small you are and that your humility keeps you hungry. We spoke about breaking default settings and showing you that there's different various ways to live, but the perspective of, as I mentioned, the news that's relevant in the UK is just not relevant there. And you're almost able to detach and decompress from things and pressures and societal, expectations, because they're just not real when you put yourself in another environment. And you're able to bring your perspective from where you're from to show them that some of the things that they're toiling and worrying about are not real either. And there's like a mutual exchange, because you're able to relieve yourself of that, and you can relieve somebody else of something that they think is so big, when in the grand scheme of things you're like, no, this is great. So the little things that we think about, we take for granted, whether it be healthcare or things of this nature. And but then you go there and it's like the food, and you've got the beaches and these rich experiences. You've got access to nature. You can go and just pick a mango fresh off the tree. And that exchange is something that's often undermined, where you can actually share something, share a unique perspective. You can share a moment. So yeah, travel, man. Unique experiences. You're extending your life. You're extending the scope of things that you can talk about. You've got more references, you've got more data sets, you can connect with people on a deeper level. You understand more about who you are. You understand the different culture, but when you're put into that culture, it tests who you are. How are you going to react? How are you going to deal with being in a country where you can't speak the language? How are you going to deal with being in a city where you don't know where you're going? What type of person are you? Are you someone that just capitulates and you give up? Or are you somebody that rises to the challenge and you look forward to thriving and learning things and starting afresh? It's not in a superficial way, but you can almost reinvent your character. Or if you don't want to reinvent yourself and you're happy with how you are, something that I like to do is I like to turn a new leaf on the areas that I wasn't happy with in certain areas. You know, because you can almost create. There's no attachment to who you were. Maybe you're somebody that's shy. When you go into that restaurant, you can now order with confidence. Be confident. It's not to say lie or deceive people, but you can accentuate areas of your character that were maybe lacking a little bit before. Okay. So let me just check through this. I may do this format more often actually, where it's just like a small journal note and then little things. So we've got travel is growth. Different cities shift your mindset. You can't unsee things. Immersing yourself in new cultures, new stimulus stretches time. You feel more alive. Sharks keep swimming. You don't want to be a big fish in a small pond. That's another thing as well. Travel is not where you go, it's who you become. Yeah. I'd say the only point here we can expand on is not being a big fish in a small pond. A lot of people, and I have this being outside of London, a lot of people where I live are content being big in this bubble. And the funny thing I realize is they don't even want to travel to the bigger cities because it will expose their inadequacy so quickly. Whereas I enjoy being who I am, going to another environment and not being the sharpest in the room, not having the most money. You know, you want to be in those rooms where you're not the most where you're not the most intelligent, because that's where you can learn. That's where the growth is going to happen. Don't be a big fish in a small pond. Sharks never stop swimming. There's a reason for it. They're always on the hunt. Apex predator, but they're happy to be on the move. And yeah, just that is something I've consistently seen. I don't know whether I was fortunate because growing up, I have family in Manchester, I had family in London, so I was always going there. Maybe I got these reference points younger, and I was fortunate enough to do that. But some of you have it and you don't use it to your advantage, you know. If you've got family in these different places, go there. Go and experience new things. And the best thing about travel sometimes is the way back, you know, maybe you don't have internet, maybe, you know, things are a bit shaky, you're on a train, you're on a plane. That's when you can take the time to actually reflect about what you've seen and how you can implement it, you know. So, yeah, go travel, man. Go travel and go be great.